Here is the voiceover narration written to maximize retention, psychological engagement, and a natural, cinematic flow. What would you do if the world suddenly went quiet? Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind where every sound is magnified. Your own breathing, the squeak of your palms against the steering wheel, and then you see it. A police canine stepping out of the cruiser, not barking, not snarling, just staring. And in that moment, your brain starts screaming things you don't say out loud. Did I do something? What did I forget in the back seat? Is that smell still in the car from last week? Right now, thousands of drivers are experiencing this exact freeze response. But here's the question I want you to actually sit with before we go any further. If a canine was brought to your car today, what do you think the dog is actually searching for? Seriously. Pause this for a second. Comment your gut instinct. Drugs? Bombs? Cash? Most people will say one of those three. And most people would be wrong. But not just wrong. Dangerously wrong. Because what you believe right now could cost you 20 minutes of your day, or it could cost you your freedom. Stay with me. Most people think a police dog is a biological drug detector, a furry narcotics sensor. And yeah, on TV that's exactly what happens. The dog walks around the car, sits down by the driver's door, and boom, probable cause. But that's not what's actually happening. And understanding the difference between the TV version and the real version is the difference between being a calm, informed citizen and being the person who accidentally volunteers their own evidence. Here's the truth they don't put in training videos. When a canine is brought to your car, the dog isn't just sniffing for one thing. And the officer handling that dog isn't just watching the dog, they're watching you. They are reading your micro-expressions, your hand placement, your throat moving as you swallow, the way your eyes track the dog versus the officer. The dog is a tool, but you are the evidence. And most people have no idea how much they're saying without opening their mouth. I want to give you a promise right now. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is happening during a canine sniff, from the moment the lights come on to the moment the dog either alerts or walks away. You'll learn the psychology behind why officers deploy the dog in the first place, the legal loophole that makes this entire process possible, and the 3 things you should never, ever do if it happens to you. This isn't fear-mongering. This is the inside knowledge that very few people outside of law enforcement and defense attorneys actually understand. Let's start with the moment most people get wrong. The stop itself. You're pulled over for something small, a broken taillight, going 6 over, maybe a rolling stop at an empty intersection. The officer walks up, asks for your license and registration, and everything feels normal. Boring, even. But here's the part nobody talks about. While that officer is standing at your window, they are already making a series of rapid-fire decisions. And one of those decisions is whether to call for a canine. Now you might think the officer needs a reason. Suspicion, a smell, something visible. But that's not the legal reality. The reality is, in most jurisdictions, if the stop is already legal, the officer can extend the stop to wait for a canine as long as they can articulate what's called reasonable suspicion. And reasonable suspicion is a much, much lower bar than you think. Here's where the psychology gets fascinating. An officer might say they smelled marijuana, even if you've never smoked in your life, even if your car is spotless. Because here's the thing, odor is subjective, and courts have historically given enormous deference to an officer's claim of smell. But wait, what if you don't have any odor? What if you're completely clean? Then the officer uses something else. Nervousness, fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, talking too much, or the opposite, being too calm. Yes, being too relaxed can be used as suspicion. You literally cannot win this game by paying it, and that's the point. So now the officer calls for a canine, and this is where your brain needs to snap into a completely different mode. Because what happens next is not random. It is a choreographed sequence designed to achieve one goal, create probable cause where none existed before. And the canine is the star of that show. Let me describe what you'll actually see. A second cruiser arrives, or the original officer's canine partner gets deployed from their own vehicle. The dog is on a leash, typically a long one, maybe 6 to 10 feet. The handler walks the dog around your car, slowly, methodically. The dog's nose is working, head bobbing, tail maybe wagging, maybe not. And then one of 2 things happens. The dog either does nothing, or the dog alerts. An alert can be a sit, a scratch, a bark, a freeze, even just a sudden change in behavior. And the moment that alert happens, the officer now has probable cause to search your entire vehicle. No warrant, no further questions. But here is the thing that will make you rethink every video you've ever seen of a canine sniff. Dogs are not machines. They are not infallible. And the science on this is actually disturbing. A 2011 study by the Chicago Tribune analyzed years of canine search data and found that when a dog alerted, officers found drugs or contraband only about 44% of the time. Think about that. More than half the time the dog was wrong. But here's the kicker. The alert still held up in court, because the legal system treats a dog's alert as presumptively reliable. The burden then falls on you to prove the dog was wrong. And good luck with that. So why does this happen? Why are we allowing an animal with a nose that can be influenced by its handler, its environment, its fatigue, even its desire for a toy to determine whether your car gets torn apart? The answer is psychological and legal, and it comes down to one word: trust. The courts trust the handler trusts the dog. And you, the driver, are standing outside of that trust circle. You are the variable, the unknown, the potential threat. But let me take you deeper, because what I just told you is the surface. Here's the part that most defense attorneys won't even tell you unless you're paying them by the hour. When a canine is brought to your car, the handler is not just walking the dog. They are managing a psychological script. They know you're watching the dog. They know your eyes are glued to that animal's nose. And while you're watching the dog, you are not watching the handler. You are not watching the other officers. You are not watching the way their hands move toward door handles, toward the trunk release, toward the next step of the escalation ladder. The dog is a distraction, a furry, four-legged distraction designed to occupy your threat detection system so the humans can do their work. This is why you'll often see the handler talking to the dog, praising the dog, even playing with the dog during the sniff. It looks casual. It looks like good training. And it is. But it's also performance. It's designed to make you feel like the dog is in control, like the dog is the decision maker, and that makes you relax, just slightly. Because if the dog is the one calling the shots, then it's not personal, right? Wrong. It is entirely personal. And the decision to call the canine was made long before the dog's nose ever touched your window. Here's the retention point I want you to hold on to. We're about to shift into the most important part of this entire video, the part about you, about what you do with your hands, your mouth, and your phone, because most people, when they see the canine approaching, make one catastrophic mistake. And once you hear what it is, you will never unhear it. The mistake is this: they try to help, they roll down all the windows, they step out of the car to show they have nothing to hide, they open the trunk themselves, they talk, they explain, they say things like, "I don't have anything, search it, I don't care." And every single one of those actions is legally suicidal. Here's why. The Fourth Amendment protects you from unreasonable searches, but that protection has a massive loophole: consent. If you consent to a search, the officer no longer needs probable cause, no longer needs a warrant, no longer needs a dog. You just gave away your rights voluntarily. And when you roll down your windows for the canine, when you open your door, when you say go ahead and search, you are not being helpful. You are being an amateur lawyer who just lost the case. The correct move, and I need you to hear this clearly, is to do nothing. Say nothing that invites a search. Do not consent. Do not obstruct, but do not assist. Keep your hands on the wheel, keep your mouth shut except to say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." And then actually stop talking. Because here's the psychological reality that officers know and most drivers don't. Silence makes them work. Silence forces them to rely on the dog. And if the dog doesn't alert, they have nothing. But if you talk, if you offer, if you try to be the nice guy, you just handed them the keys to your privacy on a silver platter. Let me give you a real-world example. A driver in Texas gets pulled for a minor lane violation. Officer says he smells marijuana. Driver says, "That's impossible. I don't use drugs. You can search if you want." Boom, consent. Officer searches, finds nothing. But now the officer has already noted the consent, already documented the odor, and the driver has lost any ability to challenge the stop later. The case never even sees a courtroom because the driver gave away the only argument they had. Compare that to a driver in the same situation who says nothing except, "I do not consent." Officer calls K9. Dog circles the car, no alert. Officer writes a ticket for the taillight. Driver drives away with rights intact. Same facts, different outcome. The only difference was 3 words and the discipline to not be helpful. Now I know what some of you are thinking, but if I have nothing to hide, why not just let them search? Because that question is a trap. It assumes that the only risk is getting caught with something illegal. But that's not the only risk. The risk is that the officer misinterprets something. The risk is that the dog alerts falsely. The risk is that you have a passenger with something in their bag that you don't know about. The risk is that the officer's body camera misses context, but captures you saying go ahead. The risk is that you are a good law-abiding person who accidentally hands a police officer the legal permission to tear your car apart, scatter your belongings on the side of the road, and keep you there for an hour while they find nothing. And then you get a sorry and a ticket for the original violation. No apology for the search, no compensation for your time, just the lingering feeling that you were punished for being cooperative. This is why the canine sniff is such a brilliant psychological tool. It exploits your desire to be seen as innocent. It exploits your fear of looking guilty by being uncooperative. And it exploits the fundamental human instinct to explain yourself when you feel accused. But here's the secret that changes everything. You don't have to explain. You don't have to cooperate beyond providing your license, registration, and proof of insurance. That's it. That's the legal limit of your obligation during a traffic stop. Everything else, the questions, the canine, the request to search, is optional. And you can simply say no. Let me pause here and ask you a reflective question. Have you ever been in a situation where you said yes to something just because saying no felt too awkward or too suspicious? Most of us have. Now multiply that by 100. That's what a traffic stop feels like when you don't know your rights. But when you do know them, the dynamic flips. You're no longer a passenger in your own stop. You're the calm, quiet center of a storm that cannot touch you without your permission or a very specific set of legal conditions. We need to talk about the one scenario that scares people the most: the alert. The dog sits, or scratches, or barks. The officer says, "The dog hit on something, I'm searching the car." What do you do now? Most people panic. They start explaining again. "That dog is wrong, I swear, I've never—" Do not do that. Here's what you do. You say, "I do not consent to this search." And then you get out of the car if asked, you stand quietly, and you let the search happen. Because here's the brutal truth. Once the dog alerts, the search is happening. Nothing you say will stop it. But what you say after the search can be used against you in court. So say nothing except the non-consent. That preserves your ability to challenge the alert later through an attorney in front of a judge. It doesn't stop the search in the moment. Nothing stops the search in the moment, but it keeps your legal options alive. And that is the difference between someone who loses their rights and someone who defends them. Now I want to pull the camera back and look at the bigger picture. Why does this system exist? Why are we training dogs to sniff cars during routine traffic stops? The answer is volume. Police departments cannot search every car. There are too many cars and too few officers, so they need a triage system, a way to quickly identify which cars are worth the time and paperwork of a full search. The K9 is that triage tool, but like any tool, it can be used correctly or incorrectly, and the research suggests that incorrect use is far more common than the public realizes. The 2014 analysis of K9 alerts in multiple states found that dogs were more likely to alert when the handler believed there was contraband, regardless of whether contraband was actually present. In other words, the handler's expectation influenced the dog's behavior. This is called the clever Hans effect, named after a horse in the early 1900s who seemed to do math but was actually reading subtle cues from his handler. Dogs are even better than horses at reading human body language. So when the handler thinks you're guilty, the dog picks up on tension, direction, even unconscious leans towards certain parts of the car, and then the dog alerts. Not because of a smell, but because the handler wanted it to. This is not conspiracy theory. This is peer-reviewed behavioral science, and it is the single biggest vulnerability in every K9 search that has ever happened. But you will never hear an officer admit that on the stand. You will hear, "The dog is trained to alert to the odor of narcotics." You will not hear, "And also my expectations and body language might have influenced the alert." That part stays quiet. So where does this leave you? It leaves you with a choice. You can drive around hoping you never get stopped, or you can understand the game so well that you never have to hope. Knowledge is not paranoia. Knowledge is the difference between freezing and breathing, between explaining and observing, between losing your afternoon and losing your rights. Let me give you the step-by-step breakdown of exactly what to do if a K9 is brought to your car, because a list of abstract principles is useless in the moment. You need a script. Step 1. The moment you see the K9 vehicle arrive, keep your hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. Do not reach for anything. Do not dig through your glove box. Do not look in the back seat. Hands visible, eyes forward. Step 2. Do not roll down your windows further than necessary to speak to the officer. If the windows are already down, leave them. Do not roll them up. Do not roll them down more. The dog can smell through closed windows. Rolling them down does not help you. It only gives the officer a clearer path to interact with you. Step 3. When the handler approaches your window with the dog, do not make eye contact with the dog. Do not talk to the dog. Do not pet the dog. The dog is not your friend in this moment. The dog is a legal instrument. Treat it with the same neutral attention you would give a metal detector. Step 4. If the officer asks you a question beyond your license and registration, you have the right to remain silent. Use it. Say, "I'm not answering questions." Or say nothing at all. Silence is not obstruction. Silence is your constitutional right. Step 5. If the officer asks for consent to search, say clearly and calmly, "I do not consent to any searches." Repeat it if necessary. Do not add explanations. Do not say, "Because I have nothing to hide," just the statement of non-consent. Step 6. If the dog alerts and the officer searches, do not watch the search. Do not comment on the search. Do not try to help them find things. Stand where they tell you. Keep your mouth closed and remember that everything you say can and will be used against you. Step 7. After the stop is over, whether you got a ticket or not, say nothing to the officer about the search. Drive away, then call an attorney if you believe your rights were violated. Do not argue on the side of the road. Do not try to prove you were right. The roadside is for survival. The courtroom is for justice. Now I want to be clear about something. This script is not anti-police. It is pro-rights. Most officers are doing their jobs in good faith, but good faith and legal accuracy are not the same thing. An officer can be perfectly nice, perfectly professional, and still conduct a search that violates your rights. And if you don't know how to say no, that violation becomes legal the moment you consent. The system is not designed to protect you from your own politeness. That's your job. So let me end with a final psychological truth. The reason this topic makes people uncomfortable is not because it's complicated. It's because it forces us to confront something we don't want to admit. We want to believe that if we do nothing wrong, nothing bad will happen. But that's not how the real world works. In the real world, bad things happen to innocent people every day. Not because the system is evil, but because the system is imperfect. And imperfection plus a driver who doesn't know their rights equals a search that shouldn't have happened. You cannot control the imperfection, but you can control whether you know your rights. And that knowledge is the difference between being a victim of the system and being a participant in it. So here's my question for you in the comments. After watching this, has your opinion changed on whether you would consent to a search? Or do you still believe that cooperation is always the safest path? I'm not here to judge. I'm here to give you the truth. What you do with it is up to you. One last thing before you go. The next time you see a canine walking around a car at a traffic stop, you won't just see a dog anymore. You'll see the handler's expectations, the driver's fear, the invisible dance of consent and probable cause. You'll see the game, and now you know how to play it, not to win, but to avoid losing something you never had to give away. Drive safe, know your rights, and never let politeness cost you your freedom.